Welcome to the Caribbean Edge. My name is Dawn Wilson. I'm your host for this evening as we discuss the very important topic. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I have a panel lined up for you to have this discussion. Some will share professional experiences as well as personal experiences. As we know, we learn so much from each other through conversation, and those experiences help us, because if you see someone else going through it or has gone through it or has spoken to someone about it on a professional level, then you are able to relate to it. So we thank each guest that is here tonight with us. I want to welcome Mr. Herbie Mack. Welcome, Herbie, who is a mental health speaker, a coach, and host of Just Believe podcast. He's the founder and CEO, and he created Just Believe to highlight and remove the stigma surrounding anxiety and depression. And he's going to share his personal experience with us as well. So we welcome you. Hi, Herbie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me, Dawn.
You're so welcome. Anything you want to add to that introduction about you?
Yes, I'm a multiple time suicide survivor. I struggle with mental health, so this is very key to me. This is the reason why I decided to speak up and talk about it. I realized I couldn't connect with anyone that didn't look like me. So therefore, I decided to become that person and that voice to share my story to help others.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate you being vulnerable tonight. And you're so true. Already you touched on something key, someone that looks like you, right? My cousin and I, who's a psychologist, had this conversation as well. You know, not a lot of people, professionals in that arena, and you want to speak to someone that looks like you, that can connect with you. Not necessarily look as color, but also your culture and your experiences as well. So happy to have you. Thank you so much. We also have three phenomenal women who are joining us from Fight for Peace. Miss Kelly Magnus, who is no stranger to the Caribbean Edge. Welcome again, Miss Kelly Magnus.
Thanks for having me again, Dawn.
You're absolutely welcome. And Kelly is Jamaica's country lead for Fight for Peace NGO, supporting young people to reach their full potential and promote peace in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And just before we even get started, just to thank you, Herbie, for your opening. I think having that kind of honesty coming from a Black man around mental health issues is really important to us. That's a big chunk of the population that we work with. And you're right, there are not a lot of those examples. So thank you for your willingness to share your experience.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And yes, it's really taboo, especially in the Caribbean. So we definitely need to have you tonight. And we have both social workers. We have Cheyenne Lester. Hi, Cheyenne, how are you? Sorry, Cheyenne, can you unmute?
Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. We are so happy you're here, Cheyenne. So you work with Fight for Peace, and especially with our youth and families, and assist access to state services and preparing for employment.
Yes.
Very critical. Thank you for being here, because we definitely need someone out there or a team that's assisting people to get back into the workforce or supporting their families and as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you too.
You're welcome. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
Thank you, Karen. So how are you, Miss McGlashin? Coming to us live from Jamaica. And I want to put this out there for people that think Jamaicans are always late. I want to tell you that Jamaicans are on time, because these ladies were so on time today for this show. They're excited to talk about this. So thank you. So Karen, tell us about what you do, because you work primarily with the youth that has been detained by the police and supporting Human Rights Project, correct?
Right, that's correct. So I work in Dedham Town and I work on the EU project, which is the Link Up project. So I work especially with youths that are detained. So one of the things we do with them is to help them to access information and services.
Okay, well, so critical, so important. So much going on around the world with our youth, with COVID-19, everything. I can't thank you, ladies from Fight for Peace, for just coming on the Caribbean Edge Kids and for sharing with us some of these examples of what our kids are going through, because it's happening worldwide, and how we can help support them as well. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Gerald Manning. And you're a minister of gospel, correct?
That is correct. My approach on mental health, my goal is to use psychology and theology, so the merging of the two, to help the individual be a little more informed about what's going on with themselves. I deal primarily with the population that's not necessarily clinically diagnosed, but are borderline. They suffer from things like depression, traits that lead to, narcissism or bipolar, but they're not really clinically diagnosed, and offer them the option of going through the process of spiritual healing and how to gain control over their psyche, their emotional state through the process of using scripture and theology.
Well, we thank you for being here, and I understand your homeland is Trinidad and Tobago.
That is correct, and I will fall on my own sword tonight. I was late, so.
You weren't late for the live, just the pre-meet and greet, so you're okay. But thank you for the disclosure right there. And Jillian, who is joining us. Hi, Ms. Thomas, welcome. I know you're from Trinidad as well, and you were teaching me a little Trini in the background there. So nice to have you. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here on this platform tonight.
Thank you. So tell us about you, Jillian.
Good. Born in Trinidad, and I've been in Boston for the majority of my life. I got into, I'm a minister, I'm also a pastor in the city. And so also, like Herbie, have also had failed suicide, thank God for that. And so theology is also part of what I believe, psychology and theology, as well as the cultural aspect of dealing with how a lot of us don't know how to deal with the things that come our way. And so we look for an out. And because it's not that you don't want to live, you just don't want to hurt anymore. So what I do is I also work as a specialist for Social Security. So for the last 15 years, I've been dealing with disability claims, and a majority of those tend to be psychologically based. And you see that the age criteria gets younger and younger, with being little people, the little toddlers who have oppositional defined disorder. And it's my son was diagnosed with autism when he was younger, and it kind of like fueled me into when he started losing his words and not talking. I'm like, okay, that's my son, he's going to be able to talk. And so it kind of like sent me on this trajectory to find out more about the mind, more about particularly a young Black man in America, that I have to be able to stand and be that voice and to help him. So that began at least my psychological training. And then my faith is what has kept me grounded in the midst of it all. So Gerald and I are very good friends, and we've come together on some other platforms. And so that's just the beginning.
Wow, thank you as well, Jillian. I am so glad you guys failed in your attempts, because one, you're here and it's such an important topic, and for people to talk about it and be open to answer questions so other people can relate to it is one of the most important things that you can do, as far as I'm concerned, as a human being, so that other people know that they are not alone. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. Mental health, defined by the World Health Organization, is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Many of us go through stages where we just don't want to get out of bed today, or the stresses of whether it's work. You're not happy in your work setting, you're not happy in your relationship, you're not happy just mentally with yourself, you may have gained weight, so many things. Our minds are so powerful that if you are not grounded enough, you can make those choices. I can see people making those choices. So I want to talk to Herbie a little bit about what age were you? Can you tell us what happened?
The age of my first attempt or my last attempt?
Your first.
About 12, 13.
And why? Why do you think it happened?
Most of it was I was young and I was raised around like a lot of guys and I didn't know how to express myself. So with that, like I kept everything bottled inside. And I thought like if I showed any emotions of how I was feeling or what I was doing, that it was a sign of weakness. So I just had so much emotion. I had a close family member to me had died, was actually murdered. And I looked up to that person. And unfortunately, I was the last one to have to identify his body. So that just stayed with me. So I couldn't like express myself. I didn't know how. And I just wanted the pain to end. I was just hurting inside and I was uncomfortable at that age, at that time.
Wow, that's an extremely young age. Can you tell us what your family structure was like?
So
did you?
Yeah, no problem. Most of the time I was with my mom. I was with my dad on the weekends. I never really like had my mom and dad together my whole life. They always been separated. So, but like they was always a part of my life. But as far as my father, like me sharing my emotions, that was like a no. You're a man. You gotta like toughen up and man up. And then as far as my mom, she was kind of disconnect. She had like whatever issues that she was going through at that time. So therefore, it was a lack of a connection with her and a lack of connection with my father. So I had no one to talk to, or I didn't even know how to talk to. Hey, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling like this. I like on that event, unfortunately, I missed probably like a month and a half of school because they knew something was wrong with me. But during this time, especially in the Bronx, nobody had the term depression, mental health, or anything like that. They just thought like, okay, maybe he's traumatized, just give him a moment to heal, which eventually I did. But during that time, I was in a dark place.
Okay, so with the first attempt, and I assume your family knew at that point.
Yeah, my mom, I wrote a letter to my mom. She caught me, thankfully. And then from there, our relationship got a little bit better. But then like probably 2 years later, I had a sister who passed from brain cancer, and that triggered something else as well.
Okay. And I can't even imagine as a mom, the confusion I would be in, so to speak, and just having to reach out to see what resources are available to help my child. Do you know if any of that took place at all?
No, we didn't. There was no Google, no YouTube during this time. What she did, she sat down and she spoke to me and told me if I ever felt like this to express myself. I did. Eventually, our relationship got a little bit better. But then, once my sister had passed, I was so numb that I was like a zombie pretty much.
And I am so sorry to that. Just heartfelt. I can't imagine, like a lot of people, that is very hard and difficult at a young age to deal with that. So as people are watching this, I just want to remind people how important it is to pay attention to each other, especially our children, because we may think we can't go through this or we're not recognizing the signs. But looking back now, what would be some of the signs that you would tell parents? What advice would you give kids and parents now?
So for the parents, some of the signs are the behavior patterns. Like my behavior pattern was changed. Normally I'm like outgoing, but I was really quiet. And then not only that, the way I was dressing. I was dressing like a, pretty much like a bum. Like I wasn't really keeping up with my clothes. My clothes was extra wrinkled. I didn't care. Like not only my clothes, my look, I was just all scruffy. My hair was everywhere. I wasn't maintaining myself. And then the things that was normally making me happy, like playing video games or hanging out with my friends, I wasn't doing that. I was just locked in my room. But thankfully, like my grandmother was the one who saw the signs, and she was the one who reached out to me. But as a child, if there's somebody that's like a teenager or whatnot that's going through this, you reach out to that person that you feel comfortable talking to. And for me, it was my grandma. I let like everything out on the table, and she was able to help me push through my depression. She was the first one that told me what depression was, which I had to look it up in the encyclopedia because it wasn't around any of my friends or around me at the time.
Wow. Kudos to your grandma and for you having someone to assist you and recognize it, because some people don't have that help. So thank you once again, Herbie, for that information. Jillian, can you share with us your experience?
Well, I had went through a divorce after 13 years of marriage and being in ministry in the city as a pastor, right? And as a pastor's wife. And, divorce is one of those, it happens so frequently, but every time I hear somebody going through divorce, for me, I relive I think, another level of, um, I feel the trauma, I feel the hurt, I feel the pain. And it's when it's just ripping away from the souls of two people. You don't get married to say, I'm done with it right now. You have two children and your whole family breaks up, and then the church that you're pastoring, it's like you're the leaders. And so now it's not just your personal family, it's everybody. And so that weight took on another pressure for me that I really couldn't articulate. And I remember while my ex had left and was in another part of the city, my daughter, one night, he had given her a key. She was 12, to go to his place after school, and I didn't know. And she got lost on the train. And so I'm saying, where is she? She should be home right now. What's going on? And I didn't know that what was going on. There was another conversation. We can go through divorce. That's a whole other situation. When you're going through divorce, let the adults be the adults, but protect the children, And so that was almost giving her like a whole nother relationship. I didn't know she's with me. I didn't know she was gone. She was trying to find her way to another part of the city, and she didn't know. And, going through the divorce, losing weight, the depression, all those things. And in my mind, I just knew that they were going to tell me that my daughter was dead. And so it was a whirlwind, I think, for me. I would call it a major spiritual war happening to steal my mind, because I was coming apart. I was fragmented already by the trauma of the divorce, but now she's not, I don't know what she is. This is out of her pattern. She's 12. It's dark. We're in the city of Boston. And in my mind, all I keep seeing is the police coming and knocking on my door saying, can you come down to the station? We found someone, I went to the end of the worst trauma in my mind. And in that moment, as much as I could take, I'm like, I can't, I just can't deal with that. I had already buried my child in my mind in that moment. So for me, although I had my son, in that moment when you're just so fragmented, it's just like, I just want this to end. I'm no good. I can't protect my child. How am I going to go through this? And so in that moment, it was whatever pills I can find and whatever was in that house that I can drink, until I'm to the point where I'm on my bed and I'm numb. I really can't feel my body. And in that moment, the phone kept ringing, but I really couldn't even pick it up because I could not feel my body. And I remember having this moment, in that moment, saying, okay, God, like I could feel the war going on around me. Okay, if you can just, if you can just get me out of this. Here was my thinking. I believe in my heart, based on my faith, that if I kill myself, that's suicide, that's a sin, that's like murder, it's a sin. But I had rationalized that if I can take the pill, right, that's the act, then I can ask God to forgive me. then if I die, then I would not go to hell. And that's all of this is in my mind. This is like torment in that moment. And I'm like, what is going on? And I have this moment, I'm thinking, I can't even go downstairs to open the door if they come and they do find out or if something is wrong. And I'm saying, God, if you get me out of this, if you just get me out of this, like, please. And I kept nodding off. But I remember the phone kept ringing. It kept ringing in my head. And it would just cause me to jump back awake. And I tell you, I don't know how many days I ended up sleeping. Of course, my daughter, they found her. She actually found her way to my mom's house. And that was a whole nother situation. But that was that moment that I think was a moment between, for me, good and evil pulling to rip me apart. And I had to make a choice, but I believe that God helped me in that moment to say, okay, this is not a time for you. And I'm saying, if you help me get out of this, like, this will not be the option I go for. It can get real bad, but if I die, it's not gonna be because by my own hands. And that was my will in that moment. And so, like, even like for Herbie, like, I understand, like, I want to like reach out and I want to grab him and hug him, right? I just want to like squeeze him really tight because your life is so precious. It is so worth living. It's like, there's nothing that you can't go through. And that's where I am. That's kind of like my passion, to embrace those kids that's in lockup. I'm a crier, so I'm not going to say a lot because I don't want to cry quickly. But because life is so precious. And I just want to just say, as I end, it's like, we all have mental health. Mental illness is different. Mental illness is different from mental health. We all have a mental health that must be taken care of. Like you have a physical body that must be cared for. You need to know the signs of when, you need to pull back, when you're overreacting, when you're, when the pressure, when you need to learn how to say no because you take on too much, or why is it you keep taking on so much? Like, why do you think you have to save the world? There's so many things about us as individuals, and even our children, that they have to learn. It's okay to not feel well and to be able to articulate that. It's when we don't have the outlet, when we don't have the information, and we don't know how to identify, what am I feeling? And don't have those individuals that can come and say, okay, let's talk about it and just share and find a safe place. And I think that all of us here in some way is working to establish those parameters where people who are going through these situations can actually find at least comfort here. So you know what? We don't know about tomorrow, but for this moment right now, let's work through this moment. So that's kind of like been my heart about why and how we help individuals, everybody, regardless of faith, culture, choices. Every soul is important, and everyone needs to be able to find that place of love and belonging where they can go through it. Not everybody goes through something, but we don't want to get you stuck there. So you're tethered to that thing in your past, those moments, those traumas, and be able to get through it. Say, okay, I've lived to overcome, and it's part of the human spirit. We have it within us to be able to rise, and I believe that with all my heart.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure women and men everywhere are relating to what you just said, because we love someone with all our heart, and you don't get married or get in a relationship and, a couple of years later, just to say it's over. We get attached to those relationships. And so at what age did you go through this?
Okay, I was married at 23 for 13 years. So that's in my middle 30s. I'm 50 now. So I was in my 30s, right? So probably 34 or 5, it's all a blur back there. Once you pass 40, it's like whatever. I was younger. I was way younger.
Yeah, but I just want to pinpoint out what age for the viewers, because you're obviously mature, very intelligent woman, and you can speak that you went through this, and you're seeing it as a pastor through getting a divorce is somewhat public as well, because you're supposed to walk this certain line as a pastor and a pastor's wife.
Supposed to tell the truth. You're supposed to stop lying and making these people think that because we're pastors and we lead spiritual leaders that we have it all together. That is part of the mental health problem, is that we're lying, and that's deception. And so if I am now living a dissonance because what I make you think that it's okay that I'm up here right next to Jesus and I don't struggle. No, I'm down here every day And I've been through that. It doesn't mean that I don't have bad days, that I don't have depression, that I have to fight through, all the other feelings and deal with situations that comes up from your past, because I'm a person. I'm a woman before I'm a woman of God. I'm a woman first. I'm a mother. I'm a friend. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a woman. And even with all my issues, that doesn't stop me from being who God has called me to be. Within all of our issues, there is still hope. And so God doesn't want perfect people. He comes to make us perfect in him. So that's my gospel is quite 100. Keep it real.
Keep it real. So yes, so I totally agree with you. What would you tell your 30-plus-year-old self looking back at you now?
I always think about that. I said, you know what, because if I'm looking back at me, I just have to remind her, keep going. You'll make it out of this. Like I do an actual role play with people within our group. Daryl will be able to talk about that, because part of how we connected is through Freedom from Your Past, which is a book that deals with different traumas in your life as an individual, that a lot of it starts in your childhood and follows you through into your adulthood, how you assimilate, how you understand. So I go back and I walk you through to that raped child, that adult, particularly a lot of us West Indians. A lot of rape and incest has happened in our culture. We don't talk about it. It is seriously taboo. It is what we find that we deal with in our church right now, that we have going on our 5th class session, where there are people who are saying, I've carried all of this for so long. It happens to almost everyone, but no one is talking about it. I would tell my young self, don't give up now. It gets better. And that's what, if you can just hold out today, wait till tomorrow. Just wait till tomorrow. And I know sometimes it feels like I've been through this for so long. One more day, give it one more day. And Jillian, you're going to make it. What would have killed you, you survived and you became stronger because of it. And so that's what I would tell myself.
I got chills. Just you saying those words are so intense. Just one more day. Just hang in there, because it will get better. Oh my God, I'm getting teary-eyed. You talk about you being a crier. I'm like, so that's why I'm going to segue to our ladies from Fight for Peace, because what you said is so important, Jillian. It's about our children as well, and what we go through as youngsters, as children, and the impact that it has on us at an early age, and then the decisions that we make from then on. And I'm so glad the Fight for Peace is there, because you are helping these vulnerable children, some that have gotten in trouble, some that don't have that home life or support system, and you are there for them every single day, giving them hope. So I want to switch to Karen and talk to her about her role in working with children. So tell us what a typical day is and some situations you've had to deal with, Karen.
You know what? I'm going to start off with a positive statement. It gives me great pleasure and joy when I pick up the phone and I get in contact with a parent, and the parent say, "Oh my God, thank you for calling. I'm so stressed." So our team, we do a lot of check-ins with our young people, because that is COVID and protocol. So we have to still remain in contact with our participants and their family. And so we check in on the regular. So when I hear a parent express how they're feeling and how we bring that level of peace and comfort and provide that safety for them.
Thank you so much. And that is certainly positive, because it impacts the families that are around, not just the individual as well. So, and I'm sure Herbie and Jillian know that, because I'm sure once that they went through, in Herbie's case, multiple scenarios, you somehow had hope in some things. I definitely need to ask Herbie that a little later, how he got through all those difficult times as well. So thank you for being so positive about that. So tell us about the work you're doing with some of the kids and some of the kids that you are speaking with every day.
Right. So my particular set that I deal with are the youths that were detained, and that is a very unique set. It's based on the Link Up project and it's under the EU. And so I work with these young men. Our high percentage is mostly males, but we have females in the group also. And so one of the things that we do with them is we offer counseling. I also do needs assessment. So we don't just push things on them. We find out what are the things that they are in need of, how we can best position them. And so that is how we work with them. That bunch is very special to me because they don't have a voice. Youth detainees, they're like, the dregs of society. I just want to explain it like that because, they're seen as worthless because you're in conflict with the law, you're at risk, you're giving trouble. We don't need you. So I give a voice to them and I love working with them because they're not like that. And especially with the set that I work with now, I have DJs in my group who wants to be a DJ, and artists, persons who want to become like an accountant. And, without our work, those persons will get pushed aside. And so what Fight for Peace is doing is so awesome and so great, giving those persons a second chance. They definitely need that second chance. They need somebody who believe that they can do it. We come from a positive view with them. We don't see them as how they are, the narrative that surrounds them. You're worthless, you're not good enough, you're not going anywhere. We don't work from that stance. We work from the stance of dignity. We give them dignity. We know that they can self-actualize, they can become something great. I have young men and women who aspire to do great things. And so we are able to give them that voice, assist them through, looking at their career goal settings. I mean, so these on a regular, when I talk to them, we talk about goal setting. What is it that you want to do? And because sometimes persons don't spend enough time to question, what is it that you want to do? What do you want to become? So they don't know that. So when I come in and the team come to work with them, we cannot just give them that opportunity to express themselves, listen to them, cater to those needs, point them into areas where this is good for you, that you can do, and we offer a sense of mentorship, a safe space. Our aim is to just better them. And I have a young man who I'm so proud of now, who has just transformed since I've been working with him. He has stopped bleaching. He has trimmed his hair because he was going to do this interview. And he's so positive and he looks to have interaction with me on a weekly basis. And I provide that form of guidance.
Thank you. That is so awesome what you're doing. Yes, we have done shows on re-entry, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking these kids are lost, not the drench of society, but lost. And to have you and other people to be there and have them and coach them to success is so rewarding for them.
It's not that they're, that is how persons will view them. That's a narrative.
Absolutely.
So we want to change that narrative into something more positive, that they can be better for themselves, better for their community, and better for the wider society.
And what's the age group of the children you're working with?
So 24 and under.
Okay, so young adults and children. So what's the youngest you have?
15.
15, okay. So Jillian says misguided, some kids, and probably just not a love and support, which is what you're providing to these children. So Kelly, anything you want to add to that?
No, just to say that, just listening to Juliana and Herbie earlier, and again, thank you for sharing your stories, and I'm so glad that you're here to share them. But it just reminded me of this is why we invest so heavy in psychosocial support. The rest of the program that we run has all kinds of other activities for young people and their parents, right? But what we realized very early on, we've been doing this work for about 5 years, is that if you don't have services in place to help the people that you're trying to put into education or sport or employment or whatever, if you don't have stuff in place to help them unpack this kind of trauma, all of the other investment is risky, right? So that, there's program after program after program, and we spend all this money and it's not working. And we believe that a big part of it is that it needs to be supported with psychosocial support. So some of the direct counseling that we've been talking about, and then some of the hand holding through state services that Cheyenne can talk some more about. That's critical for people to take advantage of what's there. If you're carrying the stuff that Herbie described, or the stuff that Julian described with you, you're not going to do your best in an employment interview. You're not going to do your best in a training session. You have to have an opportunity to unpack it, process it, and not everybody has the family support to be able to sort that out on their own. So we, as Fight for Peace, believe in an integrated approach that really twins psychosocial support with whatever else the intervention is meant to achieve, but so that you first work on the young person or the parent's ability to absorb whatever else the program is trying to give them.
Thank you for that. Thank you all for what you do. I want to switch over to the viewers a little bit. Joan Virtue Taylor is asking Jillian, she says, where's the church family who should be there for you during this time? So I'm not sure if they knew what you were going through, but she posed that question to you.
You know, so even that church family, right? And then I had an amazing church family that loved me. But as a leader, you're not bringing that burden to the people that you're leading. It is, where is your support system, right? Where's your support structure? And part of another issue within not just ministry, I think this is, I'm coming from a West Indian perspective. My mindset, what I've seen is that we don't do well with the reaching out and having the sisterhood to support us, right? We don't do well. This is maybe just my experience that, you know, you have your sisters, whatever, but what goes on in the home, that's all the business, you know, you handle that inside the house, right? So, you know, you're not bringing your mental health issues to the public forum, you know, no, it's gonna be me and God, we're gonna deal with this, right? So in that moment, I had a crisis that thank God he was able to really intervene and help me. But I'm able to share about it right now and to help establish these type of relationships in groups right now within the church, because a lot of people in church don't even know how to deal with the mental health, because this is, can we be honest, this is kind of like fairly new. Thank God, like Herbie was saying, like now Herbie looks real young to me, and he was saying, but since now we have the cell phones and we have YouTube and Google, and we now have information, then you can identify, what am I feeling? Okay, what does it feel like to be depressed? What does it feel like to be anxiety? How do you get out of a broken relationship? I mean, how do you help children who are rebellious? I mean, you know, you can Google and find all these different things that can now give you some kind of context to focus in. So you're coming out, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, within the 90s, you know, 90s, early 2000, yet and still there's a whole social structure within the church world that, you know, some things you don't talk about, right? Some things you don't engage in. And so even now we're having this discussion, the faith, the mental health aspect is now coming together, as Gerald talked about, theology and mental health, because it doesn't mean that you have a spirit that is affecting you, right? It doesn't mean that you're possessed with, you know, the spirit of depression, right? I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but everything just can't be Jambi. Everything just can't be, you know, this demon and all of that. Now let's talk about, you know, your mental health. You have a body, you have hormones that affect the way you think. You have like trauma, that people go through trauma, and you don't have that outlet, so you stuff it on the inside, but that is a real occurrence, and your mind doesn't stop thinking. Your mind doesn't stop remembering. It remembers, so you have intrusive thoughts, you have memories, you have triggers, you have nightmares. You don't know how to form relationships because you can't trust people because you were hurt so much. These are all things that we deal with as human beings. And even as Karen was saying, it's like a lot of these young people need guidance, because the traumas happen. Help me to put the pieces together so I can make better choices. And so the church family has worked there. I'm gonna tell you, I love my church family. But I funneled through a lot of things, and I'm still learning my personality as well, is that I'm one that's really introvert, although I can talk a lot. I'm introverted, and how I process is internally. So I'm learning how to connect with other people to be able to be this level, just have this transparent. I can talk to you all. I don't know you all, you know, I don't know you, right? But when people call you and they want to find out what's going on with your business, it's like, let's just eat some cake or something. Now let's just eat some ice cream because I don't want to talk about that. You see what I'm saying? So you have to develop relationship with people that you can be safe with and you can be honest and transparent with, because healing is not up to them. At the end of the day, healing is up to you, the individual. And that's the responsibility that's required for my destiny, for me fulfilling my life assignment. It doesn't matter if I took my life that day, it wasn't the situation that took my life. It was me making a choice that I wanted it out. And so I take back my power, I take back my authority, and I make a choice again. I want to live today. I want to find a solution so that I don't continue feeling this way. And it may mean that I need to reach out of my comfort zone and be again transparent and trust somebody to help me navigate through that situation.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. I'm listening to you, I hear you, and even though social media is there and there's so much the resources are there and the information is there, I'm trying to put myself in someone's position, like you have a job, you're going along life, COVID-19 hits, and you've lost your job and you can't find work, and whatever assistance is out there, it's just not going to pay your bills. You're used to being independent. We went through a stage where we're on the lockdown. You can't go anywhere, or you know, for the safety of yourself and people around you, a lot of people chose to stay home and be confined. And that in itself was an issue. We can't deal with that. I'm a creature of being out. I'm active in sports, active social life. And I can just tell from my personal change going through that, it was horrible. It was hard to think I could not go out. And so as strong as each of us think we are, when you're put in a situation out of that comfort zone, even with the information out there and the friends out there, it's like, who do you turn to? So somehow you, like you said, Jillian, you have to find that inner strength and the things that are going to make you happy to live through those life experiences to pull yourself through. Hopefully, if you have friends you can confide in, it works. But I've learned a lot about self-love in the last 2 years and appreciating every single moment. And I'm not the same person I was prior to COVID-19. I learned a lot. So I do want to switch over to Gerald a little bit and get his take on the conversation and anything else he wants to add. Hey, Gerald, thanks for your patience.
Oh, no worries. So you guys hit a lot of topics. Lastly, what you just hit on is a phenomenon known as an embedded cultural trauma. And I think worldwide, we've all experienced it. We all had to go through it. When you think of things like slavery, which is what the Caribbean diaspora, all of the African diaspora has dealt with. And you think of religions like the Jewish people and the Jewish religion and what they went through in Germany. Those are all embedded cultural traumas that people experience. They all have lingering effects and lasting effects on the individual and the culture and how it's either passed on or imbued to the next generation. And I think we have to be very cognizant of that, and how coming out of COVID, how we are going to impact those that are survivors of COVID, right? How do we move forward and regain our mental health? Because through this process, COVID has forced us to look at ourselves in ways that we never did before. Look at our relationships, our love relationships, our familiar relationships, our work relationships through Zoom, that we never really looked under the microscope the way COVID has caused us to. So there's a lot of processing and a lot of work that still is left to unpack within society, and that's worldwide. And every culture is going to deal with that differently. And the advent of social media and access to information makes these tools more readily available for the individual, right? So they can gain coping mechanisms. To that question, where's the church? As Pastor Jillian alluded to, the church isn't really equipped from a clinical perspective to deal with a lot of these types of traumas, right? And I'm talking about embedded cultural trauma, but there's all kinds of trauma. There's, as she mentioned before, there's sexual abuse, there's rape, there is, Men grew up without fathers, women grew up without fathers, all sort of abandonment issues, all sort of things that are complex. And the church doesn't really have the clinical skill sets or individuals that have those skill sets. Pastors aren't trained to be psychologists, right? They're trained through they're ministering to be social workers, but not clinical individuals that can help the individual parse through and give them viable tools to work through their issues or concerns, right? So that's something I think the church in general needs to do a better job at, and incorporating how we bring these individuals within the community, yet maintaining the belief structure, right? The faith, the theology, and not diluting the theology or the faith at all in any denomination. One of the things that Pastor Julian mentioned as well is Frantz Fanon wrote this amazing book called Black Skin, White Mask. And in this book, he described the juxtaposition of the Antillean, which is any of us from the Caribbean, how we view ourselves. And we view ourselves always in comparison to what our understanding of white culture or colonialism sees us. So we're always indifferent to each other. So it causes us not to open up and support each other, because we're always looking at the other individual sometimes as an antagonist. And then the way he broke it down was really, really interesting. And when we talk about why don't we as the African diaspora don't do mental health well, and it's a taboo, or we don't talk about our business, or what happens in the house stays in the house, it's from situations like that, right? As Frantz Fanon explained, that we're always in a juxtaposition against each other, right? There's always something where, how you been, or what's going on with you, or the upper hand scenario. And I think we have to, take all of that stuff and just throw it out the window. It's rubbish, right? We need to become more transparent. We need to be more vulnerable to the people and individuals around us, to be able to not only speak life to ourselves and in our situation, but to lead by example, right? So the young man that grows up who doesn't know how to open up, as Herbie was pointing out, doesn't know that it's okay to cry and it's okay to, speak about his feelings and his emotions, and not buy into, quote unquote, toxic masculinity, where, I have to be strong, I have to be tough, because when he was 4 years old and he fell and bruised his knee, everyone from his mother to the males around him told him, toughen up, right? How do we move past that and become transparent and become open and willing to be vulnerable? I describe vulnerability as a superpower and not a weakness. And these are some of the things I think we need to work through post-COVID. We're almost there. But it would be a shame that all of this time that we spent, this 18 to 24 months that we spent on lockdown being introspective, if we come out and just go back to business as usual. As a culture of the African diaspora, we need to be more willing to talk about things and not be afraid of the stigma that's attached to it, right? And I think sometimes when we see individuals, famous individuals from Hollywood down, sports individuals, singers and musicians and artists and all of these people talk about their mental illness, I think that's kind of how we start breaking some of that barrier down. So that's my opinion of what I've been seeing that's happening in our culture within the last 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, I want to add, besides the celebrities, I really think what you guys are doing tonight, the people can relate to us versus the celebrities even more. So these conversations need to continue because it's more real to a lot of people. So as a counselor, facilitator, mentor, and your niche is with, childhood trauma, what is some of the advice that you're giving to the young people that you're seeing?
Trauma is a very tough area to work in, right? Because the way that people deal with trauma is they avoid it. No one wants to go back into that place. And one of the tools I use is to describe the inner child in each individual, right? When your traumatic experience happened to you as a child, being bullied, being told you're too dark, your teeth too big, you're too tall, you're fat, molested, made fun of, whatever your issue, you're here, whatever your concern is, you're the stepchild within the family, so you were treated differently. You weren't affirmed by your parents. That child, when that stuff happens to the child has no tools in how to, work through that. So what the brain does in a way to protect itself is to compartmentalize all of these different traumas. And then the child locks it away. But the problem is the trauma is locked away in a place where the little child in you still is. And as you become an adult, because you never really went back and dealt with it, because as time went on, the assumption was that time heals all wounds, but it's not that, right? It's really at all, that's a lie. It doesn't heal all wounds. You just forget about it. But when you forget about it, what happens is it becomes a trigger, right? Certain things that happen in your adult life trigger you right back to that childhood experience, right? So there are 3 E's in trauma, right? It's experience, the experience that you go through, the effect of the experience. As the child remembers what happens, that's what happens with the trigger. So now you're an adult, how do you deal with it? Now you don't know what's going on with you. It's affecting your relationships, your love relationships. So if you're dealing with abandonment issues, you can't become intimate, you can't become close. And I don't mean sexually intimate, I mean emotionally intimate and available to your partner. You can't do that because you struggle with abandonment issues, right? You have bad attachments, you make and create bad attachments. So you're codependent, right? All of these different things. What I teach the individual to do is to start tracing each trigger. So every time you're triggered, you need to make a trace. You need to journal and write it down. How did you feel? What were the emotional phases or states that you were in? Write that stuff down. And every time you're triggered, put a journal down, put a journal entry, and then sit and look at how patterns, right? Look at patterns so that you can start tracing this back to your childhood and when it happened. And then the way I illustrate that is now as you as an adult that is gaining coping mechanisms and proper tools to deal with your trauma, you now have to go into that uncomfortable space, which is that repressed area where that child is locked up with all of that trauma that your brain had to compartmentalize so that you can continue socializing as a child, right? You still had to go to kindergarten, you still had to go to middle school, high school, become a young adult. So you had to live. And in order for you to live, you couldn't be in a constant state of anxiety or trauma. Your brain compartmentalizes and puts it away. But now that you're an adult, you're gaining tools, or if you don't know, what's going on, you are going on a journey to gain tools. So now you have to go into that space. And that's what we teach them how to do, is to go find that inner child and coax that inner child out and bring the trauma out and opening it out and now dealing with it. It's a tough process to do.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing, Pastor Manning, to help our youth as well. I do want to switch over to Ms. Cheyenne Lester, who is also patiently waiting. A great conversation tonight, and one of our fighters in Jamaica for our youth. So we certainly appreciate you. And Cheyenne, if you can unmute, I know you're working with the youth and the family and to assist them with access to state services and preparing them for employment. So tell us about that.
All right. So what I do is I will call the young persons and their families on a daily basis to check up with them. So I have a group of like 10 to 20 persons that I will work with. And I will ask them what their needs are. So as Karen had expressed earlier, I would do a needs assessment. And then based on that, I would find what services they would need. So say, for example, we have the PATH program here, and that will help persons with a lot of different services. And some persons only believe that PATH is some, you get lunch or it's a feeding program. That's not the case. It offers a whole lot of things, such as you can start, it has rehabilitation grants, it helps with health, it helps with educational support. So it's identifying the needs, and then have the families go to the places to register, or they will go and get the necessary documents that they will need. So if it's a TRN or an NIS card, I will tell them where to go to access those services, and then they will go to the PATH office to get registered. And PATH is just one example. There's other services. So you will have for elderly persons, you have the National Senior Citizens Council. So it depends on the needs of the clients.
Okay, so if I'm a concerned family member and I want to reach out to Fight for Peace, how do I get help?
All right, so currently we work in 6 communities in downtown. So that's Hannahtown, Trenchtown, Tivoli Gardens, Parade Gardens, Fletcher's Land. Am I leaving out any? Oh, Denham Town. Mm-hmm. And so we serve the population within those communities. Unfortunately, because of funding and not spreading too wide, we only work with those 6 communities. And with that, anybody from that community who is a part of our program can get access. And so we will have you can reach us through the phone number that is provided or through emails. And we also have community coordinators within the communities who would refer these persons to the social workers and psychologists.
Right, and just you naming those communities, that in itself seems like a lot of work. So tell me what you
John, and you heard the kind of hands-on services that both Cheyenne and Karen provide, and it's something that we really want to push as a model for working, because we have a lot of short-term light touch programs, and those don't provide the kind of support that people need to navigate through services. Julian talked a lot about people not wanting to air their dirty laundry, right? Sometimes there are social and emotional hurdles that people have to overcome before they even go and access the resources that are there. And so you need somebody to support you through that. And that is what I think Karen and Cheyenne do brilliantly, and why we are really proud of the fact that we have a team in place to provide that level of service.
And if you're watching this and you don't know those communities, they are not the best of the best communities. So
well, they're not the best served. They're not the best served communities. They're communities that are challenged with resources, but there are communities that have brilliant young people, brilliant community representatives that are fighting to improve their communities. In every place that we work, we have a nucleus of people who want to create better for their communities. So I think it's up to the rest of us to make sure that the services that they need are provided.
Absolutely, well said. So Kelly, you're probably the best person to answer this, or your team can chime in, but how do people reach out to help?
We are located at 7 Harbor Street in downtown. We have a Facebook page, we have a Instagram page if you want to reach Fight for Peace directly. But we are also really strong proponents down of people work with an organization that you're comfortable with, that you have a connection with, because the needs are such that we need an army of people working for good. And I think if we can try to make sure that we always use a networked approach and that we have organizations supporting each other, I think that's how we create change, not just in the small footprint that we work in, but across the country. So we really advocate for the integration of mental health support services in any intervention, any kind of help that people are trying to provide, but also a model where people work whether it's in the geography or in the area that you feel you're best connected to, and then try to connect yourself to other agencies doing similar work or working with a similar population.
Thank you. I can't thank you ladies enough especially because it's my homeland, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud of you being here, and to know that, you know, you're there as a resource, as mothers, as friends to these young people, and giving them hope and some directive for kids that may not have it. So I know it's a lot of hard work, but I see the beautiful smiles as well, the reward that you get from what you do, and the success stories that you could probably share with us.
Yeah, I will say that I think we give them support. They give us hope. You know, I think Karen said the successes that we see when you know, the hope is already there, the desire is there, and when that's matched with support, what it can accomplish is what inspires us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Herbie, I want to go back to you. I know we discussed your first suicide attempt at a very, very young age, 13. Tell us what happened the second time that you tried to do it, or the last time you tried to do it. What do you want people to know from all these attempts that you made, and what are your personal lessons?
My personal lessons is having a good support team, learning that, building my foundation. I didn't have one, like as far as like structure and like how to express myself. So I had to learn how to express myself. And like what Gerald said, I got a notebook and I was writing, journaling. Journaling is the reason like I'm still here today. I was able to sit down and realize the triggers and how to pick myself up. And then I did something that seems weird. This time Google was around. This was about 5 years ago. I Google how to love, like self-love. Like, what is that? Nobody taught me that. So I had to learn how to love myself. I was loving everyone else, but I wasn't loving myself. And I found that that was odd and weird. So I had to start speaking to myself positive in the mirror every day, saying, you know, I can achieve this. I am smart. I can do this. All I have to do is just believe. So that's what I learned. It's about taking care of myself and loving myself, but also having a good foundation, a support system where I can sit down and vent. The people that I can really trust, that's not going to just give me the fluff, but actually give me reality. Hey, you're wrong for thinking like this. Actually think like this. And that's the reason why I'm here today. Those was the lessons that I learned.
Thank you. I am also learning a lot about self-love as I go through COVID-19, like everyone else, as I go through life, this journey we're on, as I go through speaking to people like yourselves and doing different topics and having different conversations and doing research. And I started looking at self-care and what it means to a lot of people. And like you said, just journaling helped you. People reading books are helping themselves. People meditating. I didn't realize how important my sports life was. I did it as part of my routine, like 5-6 days a week. But when it was taken away, because I could no longer go play beach volleyball, it impacted me mentally, where my kids were like, Mom, you need to go play volleyball. Just take the protection you need, you know, just hand sanitize, because that's how important those things are to us individually. And I know sports is so important to our children. So if they're inclined to do sports or music or instruments, it's a matter of our parents recognizing that as well. And I know it's a Caribbean thing too. Sometimes we grow up wanting our kids to be doctors and lawyers versus the musicians and the artists and stuff. So, you know, just supporting our children in whatever avenue they want to follow is so important. Exercising, moving more, yoga were some of the things, just walking. I lived in my home for 10 years, and I have to share this story because I never heard the birds until COVID-19. As simple as that sounds, it was sitting outside my patio because everything went still. And I was like, oh my God, there are birds out here. And it's just that appreciation of life. And I see you guys nodding your head. And it's so important, like Herbie just said, and we've all talked about, is that self-love for yourself and pulling yourself out of whatever that bad moment is going to make a difference. I'm going to go around this room as we wrap up tonight and just first of all, thank you all. Thank our viewers for tuning in. And I just want to get anything that I may have missed, any recap, just let me know. We'll start with Gerald. Gerald, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think Herbie and yourself, you guys brought up a really important thing within, and we're talking about obviously the diaspora, right? So we're talking about our culture. And I've been in and around Guyanese, Jamaicans, Trinis, Bajans, Vinci. I've been around a lot of the different Caribbean islands, even Latinx. And for whatever reason, there is anyone my age or my generation, so I'm, I guess, Generation X and older, they all have an understanding of understood love, but not expressed love. So you're talking about self-love. Herbie was talking about learning about what it meant to love himself. Our parents and the generation before them, we that are now cognizant about feelings and emotions and are more introspective and a little more conscious, aware of our conscience, need to do a couple of things. And I think the first thing we need to do is forgive ourselves and then forgive how we were raised, right? The people that raised us under certain circumstances, right? And we understood that they loved us by the way they provided for us and, you know, the things that they did, right? They provided a roof, you know, what they could afford as far as clothing and whatnot. So we understood that as love. But when you move into a Western culture and a Western notion of understood love or expressed love, it kind of clashes with how we were raised or what we understood as love. So a lot of individuals are struggling with that right now, right? And that self-love and affirmation, you know, I have groups where I facilitate that are just men. And I have men that don't recollect ever hearing a parent telling them, I love you, right? And I have individuals that don't remember getting a hug from their parents past probably the age of maybe 6, right? So this is a big, big part of when we think about mental health. And I'm a big proponent of the undiagnosed, not clinical forms of mental health, right? We need to go after this area and this community, because those that are clinical or diagnosed, there's help, right? There's services. They're already seeing someone, a therapist, a psychologist. They're either on medication or some sort of program or track to better health. But there are so many of us that are struggling in brokenness that unless we start really talking about this on a larger scale, and particularly within our diaspora, within the African American or the African Caribbean diaspora, we're not going to move forward. We're not going to heal as a culture. We're going to continue, you know, with an imbued cultural trauma. We need to start loving ourselves, as you said, and we need to find ways to do that. I've got men that, you know, have never been told what it means to be a father, what their understanding of love or becoming a man is from what social media or what television or the movies has expressed or shown them what that is, what the definition of that is. There was never a man that actually stood there and said, hey, you're a man now. So you grow up with a broken understanding of what it means to be a man. And then when you have children, you can't pass that. What are you passing on? You're passing on brokenness, right? I was helping someone, offering some counseling to someone, and they struggled because between the ages of maybe 9 and 18, their father was kind of distant from them because the father didn't know how to have a nurturing relationship with a son within that time frame, right? He knew how to love him as a little boy and how to talk and relate to him as a grown man. But there was this distinct age gap in the son's life that he struggled with. So now he has children, and now he's struggling with that same issue. And he finds himself following through the process of escapism and trying to disappear in other things and work in things or activities outside the home. So this is the kind of mental health I think we need to also focus on outside of the clinically diagnosed mental health.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. We talk a lot about breaking cycles, so certainly some personal responsibility and just deciding not to follow in your parents' footsteps is certainly key to that. So thank you. We appreciate you being here, Gerald Manning, Pastor Gerald Manning. And Cheyenne, anything you want to say in closing?
So, yes, so I want to thank everybody for sharing. It's these stories that allows our work as social workers to be able to become a little easier, because people will be able to come to us and express how they're truly feeling about an issue, and we will be able to assist them. So I really appreciated the disclosure. Sometimes, you know, it's not really easy to talk about things that has happened in your past. And so I'm really, really appreciative of this forum.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cheyenne. And once again, we appreciate the work that you are doing with our youth. And I must say, you have a smile that lights up the room. So I can just imagine the kids and the families interacting with you. That smile is award-winning, young lady.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you too, Karen, my other beautiful smile. Anything you want to add to the conversation?
Thank you. Most definitely. When Cheyenne spoke earlier, you noticed that the communities that we work in are situated in violent communities. And that alone is enough to give persons mental illness. And so the stigma that attaches to mental illness is that, you know, they're having symptoms, they don't know about it. We want to bring awareness to that. It's okay to seek help. You're not crazy if you seek some assistance for your mental health. And that is what I want to leave here to let persons know that it's okay if you're not feeling well, if you're feeling anxious, you can find somebody to talk to, and you're not crazy, but you just want to take care of your mental health, because your persons, like, they live in a war zone, and that alone just heightens everything. And we want to change the narrative and the stigma about mental health. It's okay. We're here to serve you. We are here, you know, to share with you, provide you with assistance, and point you to the assistance if you need to. And also to change the narrative that we have about youth in conflict with the law, that they are worthless. We want to show that, you know, providing the resources, pointing them to the proper sources can alleviate some of these things and make them into better human beings.
And, you know, as you're talking, Karen, I just think of the chain effects of what you guys are doing. You're saving one person's life or helping one person look at life differently. And in turn, that's going to allow them to have a better life and affect other people. And then other people are impacted by that. So from the bottom of our hearts, you know, just thank you for all you're doing out there. And Miss Kelly.
Very little to add to that, just to say that we believe really strongly in having conversations like this and in bringing awareness to mental health, but also in strengthening mental health resources at the community level. So we use a program called Psychological First Aid, which is just the mental health equivalent of first aid. It's not for clinicians. It's for everybody to just have a basic. It's just, if you're not a doctor, but there's a kid in the room bleeding from the head, you don't think that you can perform surgery, right? But you know that that's not right. And you know that there's some stuff you need to do right away. And you know that you need to get help. And so Psychological First Aid is the mental health equivalent like that. Just to give you a heads up on pick up on some signs like Herbie was talking about earlier, just recognizing those signs, not labeling the kid or stigmatizing the kid further. This kid is acting out, or this kid is doing, just knowing what you're looking at, understanding that you are maybe not the best person to respond 100%, but there's some stuff you can do in the moment just to not make the situation get worse. And then knowing that you need to get that child connected to services. And so that's a program that we train people in here, and that we believe very strongly needs to be made more available at the community level so that more people can connect with each other and be able to provide some immediate support to young people who might be having challenges.
Thank you. And once again, Kelly, thanks for all Fight for Peace and your team does for the community.
Thank you for having us, Dawn.
You're welcome. And Herbie, any final thoughts you want to share with us tonight?
Yes. If you are going through a mental health challenge, I want you to understand it's a bad day, not a bad life. So don't be scared to use the resources. We do have social media where you can find somebody or follow. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then reach out to someone that you do trust, that you can express yourself, because we need to just talk about it to break the stigma. That's what I have to say about it.
Thank you. And Miss Jillian Thomas, Pastor Thomas.
Well, thank you. So I'm so excited to be on here. I'm like, this is like, so I'm like, we can go another hour. Oh man, the time is running out. This is like, it's so amazing just to be able to hear and listen and to share. So, and thank you, Ms. Dawn, for allowing me to be on this panel tonight. You know, I would say this, that we all have feelings, emotions, we have behaviors. It's part of what makes us humans. Everyone has that part of you that needs to be developed. And when we talk about mental health, that word itself, we have to remove the stigma of mental health. It's almost like saying you need to take a shower. I mean, you wouldn't say, okay, if you haven't bathed in like 4 or 5 days, it's like it's time for you to do something about that, because your body requires that kind of care. Just as important as the external body, so also is the importance of your mental health. And so when you negate to not pay attention to yourself with the self-care, with the assessments of, okay, what am I feeling right now? What's going on with me? What's happening? When you negate to pay attention to that, mental health can decline. And it's in the declining of your mental health where we move into the facet of mental illness. And so some mental illness can be reversed with treatment, with care, with therapy. But like Kelly was saying, and I just love that, like that psychological first aid. I'm like, we got to connect, because I can see that going, that's being part of just another conversation for the churches, right? For the families, for people, like how do you get involved? It's like, I'm not a psychologist. I haven't had any training in psychology, but I know that child lashing out of that behavior right there, something else, right? Because we're all connected with this human spirit that's like, you may not know, but something inside of you know, because we're part of this large family of God's children. So there's some things I may not know what I know, but I know something is not right. And then if I can be given those tools to say, okay, maybe a smile, maybe a nod, how you win that child, maybe a gentle touch, or whatever it is, maybe a phone call to somebody that you know, just in how you can insert in the situation. Like she just said, if someone's bleeding, I'm not a doctor, but my God, I know I can at least call 911. I know I can need to probably tie up that hand before you bleed out, something, right? Get involved. And so bringing the information and the awareness we have began. And I feel like these are more conversations, like we said, will happen like this. But after the conversation, there's a need for the correlated action, because information is not power. Information that you internalize and act on, that's where you have the results. And so I believe that this has begun, and great things will come out from more symposiums and platforms like this, where we can really take in and listen, not just helping that child. It's like Gerald talked about, from childhood to those parents, to those young people, to the elderly who are by themselves and isolating, and they're also in a high risk for suicide because they feel like there's nothing left to give, right? So across the human dynamic, we are our brother's keeper, and get involved in some capacity. If you've heard the information here tonight, then you're the one. Tag, you're it. You're not just hearing it just because it's something to do. There is something for you to do. Is be involved and become a change agent wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. And Herbie has this sign behind him. I'm not sure if everyone sees it, but it says grateful. And I saw something about having a grateful journal today. And it's just getting up every day and writing down what you are grateful for. And it just changes your mindset. Some people get up every day and they pray and they're just thankful for another day. So that sign reminded me of that, to just be grateful. And if you can, start that grateful journey and see how your life changes with just those positive thoughts. The conversation just started on mental health. We just tipped it. You know, there's so many different sections we can go into mental health. But I thank each and every one of you for what you're doing and for being vulnerable, open, and for what you're doing professionally and personally. Thank you for tuning in and sharing this episode of the Caribbean Edge. And Michelle Hussein and I, Dawn Wilson, thank you so much. Have an amazing week and continue to be grateful. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, Dawn, and we're grateful to you and your team. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank you so
guys.
much for the invite.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.